The Manhattan Project. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki changed the world. In the year of 1939, the Allies were warned that Germany had started developing atomic weapons. As a compromise, the Allies started their own atomic program and bombed the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end the war. The United States believed they did what they had to do, but the leaders of the Allied powers could have come up with a better, more ethical solution to claim victory in the war. On August 2, 1939, Albert Einstein sent a letter written by Leo Szilard to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This letter warned that Germany might soon start developing atomic weapons and suggested that the United States start their own atomic program. The President appointed a uranium committee in October 1939, but there was not much funding for uranium and graphite to build a nuclear reactor, only $40,000. A large-scale U.S. atomic project, still limited only to research, did not begin until December 6, 1941, one day before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It became the Manhattan Project in August 1942. Due to the entirety of the Manhattan Project, it became obvious that a vast array of pilot plants, laboratories, and manufacturing facilities would have to be constructed so that the assembled scientists could carry out their missions. Nuclear facilities were built at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hanford, Washington. The main assembly plant was built at Los Alamos, New Mexico. The combined efforts of American, British, and Canadian scientists at these locations resulted in the construction of uranium and plutonium atomic bombs with the power to destroy a city. In July 1945, scientists working in Los Alamos successfully exploded the first atomic bomb at the Trinity site in the nearby city of Alamogordo. When the bomb was finally detonated atop a steel tower, an intense light flash and sudden wave of heat was followed by a great burst of sound echoing in the valley. Together with the British Empire and China, the United States called for the unconditional surrender of the Japanese armed forces in the Potsdam Declaration on July 26, 1945. The alternative being prompt and utter destruction. However, Japan did not agree to the unconditional surrender, and World War II continued. Japan disagreeing to the Allies' terms led the way to the United States' compromise of a nuclear ending of the Second World War. These compromises were the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Manhattan Project launched America into the nuclear age, from the first atomic bombs to the extremely powerful intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, that we have today. The Manhattan Project impacted the world greatly, especially with the potential threat of a nuclear war with North Korea too close for comfort. The nuclear weapons from the Manhattan Project can be seen as both a defense and a threat, and this caused some people to oppose the Manhattan Project and the bombings. This support was given up to end the war, that is, without causing too much bloodshed.
It reaches a peak of 15 million deaths in 1943, the largest single year for death. That was both from the fighting and also the Holocaust of the Jews. And then it begins to decline rapidly. And by the end of the Second World War, the number of deaths from war has dropped to about 1 to 2 million a year.
The Manhattan Project was the Allies' compromise to the war. It was a way to end the global conflict of World War II, and the effects of the project allowed there to be less bloodshed than there could have been on both sides of the war. But the effects of one of the largest undertakings ever had not yet begun. On August 6, 1945, the uranium atomic bomb Little Boy was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima by a B-29 bomber plane with a force equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The city of Hiroshima was utterly annihilated by the Little Boy. 70,000 of the 76,000 buildings in Hiroshima were damaged. The explosion wiped out 90% of the city and immediately killed 80,000 people, and many more have died to this date. The U.S. Department of Energy has estimated that after 5 years, there were perhaps 100,000 or more fatalities as a result of the bombing. On August 7, 1945, the decision to drop a second bomb was made. This bomb, named the Fat Man, had the explosive force of 21,000 tons of TNT. The intended target for the second atomic bomb was the Japanese city of Kokura, where the Japanese had one of their largest munitions plants. The B-29 started towards Kokura on August 9th. However, smoke obscured the point where the bomb was to be dropped, so the American aircraft set off to the secondary target of Nagasaki. At 10:58 a.m., Boxcar visually dropped Fat Man. It exploded about 1.5 miles northwest of the intended aiming point. The blast from the plutonium atomic bomb that had more force than Little Boy was confined to the Urakami Valley instead, and the rest of the facility was protected by mountains. However, the damage was still very great. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki caused so much damage to the people of Japan. But people today can only speculate how the world would be like if not for those bombings. The world could very well be worse than seen in these pictures that show the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the year of 1945. The total death toll of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was 225,000 people. On August 15th, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki, Japan accepted the unconditional surrender. The surrender was formally and officially signed on September 2, 1945, bringing an end to the hostilities of World War II. The Manhattan Project resulted in enormous breakthroughs in the world of nuclear science. An example of this is the first successful nuclear chain reaction, which occurred under Stack Field in the city of Chicago. However, although the Manhattan Project was helpful, it also produced bombs that decimated cities and destroyed thousands of lives. A scientist who worked with these bombs shares his experience.
Downtown and pick up the radioactive materials in little canisters, stick it in my pocket and bring it back until finally my blood count went down and my red blood count, and they decided that, well, we'd better pick it up with a station wagon with a big lead container where you could put the radioactive material in it, but it didn't affect me.
Supporters of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki believed that the bombings precluded an invasion of the Japanese mainland. In August 1945, a Gallup poll was taken by the U.S., and 85% of people supported the bombings. 10% were opposed to them, and 5% had no opinion. However, this was before more light was shed on just how many people were killed in the bombings and how much suffering there was. This caused many people to be opposed to the bombings, but supporters were still the majority. In the decades after the bombings, historians debating over this topic were divided into two groups: traditionalists, who were the supporters, and revisionists, who opposed the bombings. Revisionist scholars generally say that the bombs were unnecessary. Among other claims, they suggest that Japan was ready to surrender. They also argue that the Soviet invasion of Manchuria on August 8 to 9, 1945, rather than the use of the atomic bombs, was decisive in precipitating Japan's surrender. The debate over the decision to launch the bombs that decimated the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki still goes on today, and America is divided over their decision. Richard Rhodes states an effect of the Manhattan Project.
I think one of the most obvious changes that came after the bombs were used in 1945 was a sudden and precipitous decline in the scale of war.
The Manhattan Project introduced the world to nuclear weapons. The threat and resource of nuclear weapons has extremely decreased deaths in human society. President Truman, along with the other leaders of the Allied powers, made the decision to drop bombs on the innocent people of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is believed that Soviet entry into the war was more of a contributing factor to Japan's unconditional surrender than the bombings, but the bombings were a crucial element and have completely changed modern warfare. The United States believed they took the best course of action, but the leaders of the Allied powers could have reached a more ethical compromise to claim victory in the war.